This is an angry rant. I'm not monetizing this video. And the target audience are those ignorant, stupid black folks that are out there calling themselves Black Lives Matter or whatever other thing that they want to call themselves, not fucking around, coalition, whoever, in protest of racism and such in this country. Now, I won't argue that there are not racist people, but I will absolutely defend the country, and that is not a racist country. And I've read the stuff, the 1619 Project and that stupid chick, this critical race theory, which I've read all of that stuff, including the one from the author. And bullshit flag is down. Now, some would try to argue with me to say I have no right, no credentials to argue against that, because most people, when they see me, they think I'm a white guy. Well, let me talk about that first. First, I've been on this rock for a long time. I've been in the struggle. And those of you that have been around, those black folks have been around, know what I'm talking about. Al Sharpton should be ashamed of himself. Jesse Jackson should be ashamed of himself. Anybody who is their contemporaries and still talks this modern bullshit about Black Lives Matter and these other things should be ashamed of themselves, right? Because what has happened is you have reversed, you have flipped the argument, you have flipped the energy from what black folks were doing back then, which was peaceful protesting. Now they got their asses kicked. If those of you have seen the lunch counter and the lunch counter videos and so forth, but they were trained how to take a beating, because they did get beat, and they got beat by white folks who were racist and angry at them for daring to get out of their place. Now, I have said this before, for those of you who don't know, I'm a black guy, have been, and I don't get into this identity politics. Why? Because even though I'm high yellow, which is what those folks in Louisiana would tend to call me, right? White people always will define who you are as a black person. Forget all this. Today I identify as XYZ. Now, my great-grandmother, whose home is a National Historic Monument in downtown Richmond, Virginia, and she has a statue to her name in the middle of downtown Richmond, Virginia, was one of the people who helped founded the NAACP with the original crew, W.B. Du Bois and all those guys, and was with the crew when they had to go to Canada to create the NAACP, because if they tried to do it in her house where they would tend to be meeting, they would have all been murdered, because that was the word on the street. So they had to leave the country to form that, right? Look it up, Maggie L. Walker, not the other Maggie Walker who did all the stupid shit for black women to make their hair straight. That was stupid. Maggie L. Walker, Richmond, Virginia, right? So that's my lineage. She was born on a plantation in Richmond, the largest plantation there. So I'm not going to get in a pissing contest with these young black warriors who think they are all that in a bag of chips, because you don't know shit. So let me come back to the reason for this video. What is happening now is that the anti-racism energy has been co-opted by those who would weaponize white or black people to destroy things because I'm angry I'm angry, and you should understand that I'm angry, and it should be okay that I burn shit down, that I hit people, that I get in their face, that I do karate kicks and try to, No, that is not how that is supposed to work. If you're going to peacefully protest, then you peacefully protest. Now, for those who would if you wish to peacefully protest and you have a concern that somehow somebody's going to use violence to stop you from doing that, I would direct you to your Black history, which most of you have no fucking idea about. Let me introduce you to the Deacons for Defense and Justice. Who were they? Right? Who were they? The Deacons for Defense and Justice were born in 1964 in Jonesboro, Louisiana. Why? To protect civil rights activists, black and white, all of those who were going to protest peacefully, which means they were going to march somewhere, which totally pissed off all the racist white folks. I mean, don't get it twisted. These white folks were mad, right? And there was one group of white folks who were really mad, and that was the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan, for those of you who know who they are. So these group of World War II and Korea black veterans, combat veterans, got together and said, well, we're not going to have this. We're not going to have these white folks jumping on these black folks and all they're doing is walking and singing hymns and all that kind of stuff. Peaceful protesting, right? So they armed themselves. The Deacons for Defense and Justice armed themselves and were present during many of these marches in the South, right? No one was ever shot on either side. The white folks who were mad were still mad, but they kept their distance. There were some white men who brought their long guns. By the way, the Deacons for Defense and Justice always rocked with long guns. And it was either shotguns, bolt action, surplus, whatever. But remember, these folks were combat veterans. They knew how to run their guns, all right? And not to be outdone, some of the Klan's members were veterans too. So they knew who they were dealing with. There were no shots fired until 1966. 1966, Mississippi, the March for Peace. The March for Peace. And many of you have no idea what that was. So let me refresh your memory, you stupid ass folks. James Meredith. James Meredith was doing the March Against Fear. He was the first black person to enroll at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. And he decided he was going to walk alone on June 6, 1966, from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi. Just to say, racism is in this country and we ought to pay attention to it. And there was voter discrimination. I'm talking about real voter discrimination, Jim Crow shit. Not this, stupid stuff that some of these white folks are doing today. They're worried that there's voter fraud. I mean, they need to just get a grip. But there was real voter intimidation back in those days. And he was marching to bring attention to that. And right after he started, he was murdered. He was murdered by a guy named James Norvell, obviously a white gunman. Now, after that, several black organizations, and most of you don't even know who they were, the SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Mississippi Freedom and Democratic Party, CORE, the Congress on Racial Equality, and the Medical Committee for Human Rights. They got together, formed a coalition, and continued Meredith's march. But they requested the services of the Deacons for Defense and Justice. And these black men, from that point, guarded the walk. And that's what they did. Guarded the walk. Not the riot, the walk. No one was shot. No one was shot at. Yes, there were crazy white folks that were mad, whether they were Klan or not. And they were acting all ugly and, and yelling racial epithets and all that stuff. The point is, to black folks, everyone, but I'm focused on you black folks out there that are stupid. You have a Second Amendment right, and you have a Second Amendment right to use as part of your First Amendment right to protest if you wish, right? And to everyone, it is okay to let everyone know that you are armed as you are peacefully protesting, right? The operative word is peacefully. If you're in the middle, if your peaceful protest has now degenerated into what the cops would then call a riot, then the other folks get to check you with their arms. So if you are a black person and you're running amok through the village and you're burning shit, you're going up to people, you're beating them up, you're burning cars, you're doing any of that crazy stuff, and others are around protecting others or protecting other property, right? And they shoot you in the face, you deserve it. So you black folks that are out there getting in front of news cameras and talking about how awful it is that this Kyle Rittenhouse guy got off, right? Don't do stupid stuff, because then you get stupid prizes, and one of those might be a little, round in the head, or someplace else in your body. It is okay to be armed at a protest, right? It is even okay to be armed at a riot as long as you're not the one that started the riot, right? So go back and look at the history, and there's a video on it with Forrest Whitaker as a star, by the way, called the Deacons for Defense and Justice, right? Go learn your history, you stupid Negroes. And as always, thanks for watching. Please carry on.